Hello, my name is Santiago Rodriguez Alcerreca. In this video, my team and I will analyze the EV auto parts and component industry in Mexico and its future. We'll explore key aspects of the EV market and how Mexico is becoming a key player with growing production capabilities. Using strategic tools like Porter's Five Forces, the CPM, Porter's Diamond, Gauge Distance, and the Pested Wiglund, we'll dive into the competitiveness of Mexico's EV part industry. At the end, we'll explain Mexico's international opportunities, recommend strategies for global expansion, and much more.
In today's video, we'll divide into the five forces analysis for the electrical vehicle component manufacturing industry in Mexico. This analysis helps us understand the competitive landscape and the key factor of shaping the industry's future. Let's start by exploring the first two forces, the threat of new entrants and the threat of substitute. The threat of new entrants is high in Mexico's EV component manufacturing sector. While the significant costs associated with technology, research, and development create barriers, government policies, promotory clean energy, and EV manufacturing provide things that could attract new players. However, for these new entrants to succeed, they must offer innovative and cost-effective products to gain market. On the other hand, the threat of substitute primarily comes from components for traditional internal combustion engine vehicles. However, as the world moves toward electrification, the demand for EV component is expected to grow, reducing the impact of substitute over time. Yet, we should keep an eye on emerging technologies like hydrogen vehicles, which although less developed, could become a competitive alternative in the future. Now, let's move on the remaining three forces, starting with rivalry among existing competitors. The EV component manufacturing industry in Mexico is becoming increasingly competitive. Both national and international companies are vying for a share of this growing market, driven by global demand for EVs. The competition is fierce, with companies focusing on technological innovation, quality, and cost efficiency to stay ahead. Next, we have the bargaining power of customer. In this industry, the customer, primarily automakers and EV assembling plants, hold significant power. With the automotive sector being highly consolidated, this large company can negotiate with lower price and demand higher quality standards. Their ability to switch suppliers globally further strengthens their position. Lastly, we consider the bargaining power of suppliers. Supplier of essential material like lithium-ion and semiconductor, while substantial power due to high demand and the specialized nature of these products. However, as the market grows and diversifies, this power might diminish, especially with the development of new technologies and reduce the dependency on specific. In the conclusion, the EV company manufacturing industry in Mexico represents a complex and dynamic environment. By understanding these five forces, company can better navigate the challenge and seize opportunities in this rapidly evolving sector. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more insights.
Hi, my name is Carl, and I'm going to explain the competitive profile matrix for this audience. The competitive profile matrix is more used to compare a company or a country against its competitors. So in this competitive profile matrix, we're going to have China, USA, and Mexico putting each other against the other. So we can compare how viable is to the auto part or a vehicle electrical vehicle company or industry to enter into this country. First, we use a set of indicators that is the capacity to start a business, GDP growth, inflation, external debt, economic reserves, change in inventory, industry added value, tax revenue, and assets of the financial sector. Then we establish or put weight on each of every indicator, but not every indicator can be of the same value, because some are more important than the others. So we use a database that the teacher gave to us. So we, using that database and the indicators we have chosen, we put the value or the number, the rating that the database is giving to us from from each indicator and each country. So we have that the inflation in China is 1.6, the inflation in the United States is 2.1, and in Mexico is 6. So now that we have this, we use this rating to know what is the country that has the most points in the overall weight of this indicator. So we get to the conclusion that, as we can see, that is signalized in different colors, that the most viable country for a vehicle industry to enter is the USA, because it's the one that has the most positive indicators and the most competitive market to enter. Then we have Mexico, that it's in the middle, but Mexico is not so far from China, as you see. It's only a 200 margin between the both of them. And this says that there is not a big difference between Mexico and China, but there is some things in Mexico that benefit the industry to enter in this country than in China. So we see that one of the most important indicators in this part is the industry added value. That United States, it's the one that has the most value on rating on this indicator. So we get to the conclusion that in case industry want to enter to Mexico, they want to enter to the market, or in something like want to enter to a market in China, USA, or Mexico, the most viable country to enter is the USA. Then we do another CPM because in which we have again China, USA, and Mexico. And in this CPM, we analyze the production that these countries have for auto parts. So we have like electrical vehicle sold, car battery sold, car sales produced, car suspension produced, transmission produced, or motor produced. So we use these indicators that we have to look which country is the better for production, in this case, in this sector of producing auto parts. The unit that we use is in millions of units, millions of cars, millions of batteries. So in this case, it's not United States the best in terms of production. We discovered that in terms of production, the best one is China. So we know, as common knowledge, that China is one of the countries that produces the most of cars in the world. So if you want to enter like a manufacturer company to produce your cars, the country that is better for you to enter is China, then followed by United States, that is other, or it's not as big as China, and it's incredible the difference China have from United States, that is like, it's abysmal, but it's like the middle ground. And if you want to enter to Mexico as a country looking for starting a production, it's not the best, because the production is very limited, because Mexico is not as developed as the other two countries in the terms of producing auto parts or producing cars, because Mexico is not the thing that they focus on.
The Porter Diamond analysis can help us to identify the advantages of certain country or region in a specific industry. There are several indicators and factors that may affect this advantage. Among them are the factory conditions, in which they are included mineral resources and energy. In this aspect, Mexico has a great position in renewable energy sources, particularly in solar energy. This is important because it can support the electric vehicle production and sustain the power infrastructure. It also has access to key materials such as lithium.
The labor force is considerably cheaper than in other countries, making Mexico more attractive for foreign investment. Speaking of infrastructure, Mexico has a good transport connection, including train and ports. This makes easier the export process. Also, it is a country that is constantly investing in developing infrastructure for this industry in particular. Speaking of demand conditions, the international demand, Mexico closeness to the United States offer a lot of opportunity to export vehicles and components. This by taking advantage of the international agreements they share with this country. Speaking of the domestic market, Mexican consumers have become more aware of environmental issues, and an increase in the demand for these vehicles have occurred. Despite that, affordability remains a challenge, mainly because the majority of clients are still concentrated among the higher income class. In the related and supporting industries, the automotive industry that is already established in Mexico, and it's one of the biggest in the world, has a strong foundation for electric vehicles. Also, the large lithium reserves have encouraged companies such as Tesla, BMW, and Audi to start integrating these vehicles manufacturing into their operations in Mexico. In the technology and battery productions will still depend a lot of import products because we lack in capacity for this advanced electrical vehicle technology as it is still in developing. In the energy sector, Mexico's renewable energy sector focus mainly concentrated on solar and wind energy, and this is related with the need energy for clean energy to power this kind of vehicles infrastructure. In firm strategy, structure, and rivalry, there are domestic firms that are emerging in Mexico that offer small, affordable cars. However, these local brands face the competition from already established international brands. This is related with the foreign investment, which is good because the major global automakers have put their eyes on the country and have already set up production facilities in Mexico. This encourages increased competitiveness and innovation, but it also brings challenges for these small local companies. Also, there are a lot of government policies that have been implemented that support the development of this industry. One example of this are tax incentives and investments in charging infrastructures. As additional factors, the government has created a variety of tax breaks and trade agreements that incentivize the automotive industry to set up their operations and production factories in Mexico. Speaking of chance, Mexico's location is an advantage for the automotive industry. Its closeness to the United States, which is one of the major electrical vehicle producers, is a key factor. But also, changes in trade policies among these neighbor states and countries can affect the global demand. I am Santiago Mora Treviño.
Hello, well, it's me again, Santiago Rodriguez Alcerca, and now we're going to be analyzing the cage distance framework. So, this analysis will compare the electric vehicles part manufacturing industry between Mexico, China, and Mexico, US. We will be focusing on several key aspects that affect trade relationship and competitiveness. So, let's first start with the cultural distance. For this, we'll be predominantly talking about social customs and norms. Well, first, in China, they maintain an indirect communication style, while in Mexico, communication is a lot more direct. In both countries, the family is centered to show social and business life, whereas in the US, communication is more task-oriented and individualistic. The sense of community it's a lot more stronger in Mexico, while in the US, individualism it's what predominates. Now, for the administrative distance, we'll be talking about first corruption and attitudes toward foreign companies. While both Mexico and China have faced significant corruption problems for many years that can affect business operations. In the contrast, the US has a stronger legal framework that can mitigate and help mitigate this problem. So, Mexico and the US share an open attitude towards foreign investments, although the US regulatory system is a lot more transparent and predictable. This is what makes the US the better pair for dealing with corruption and the attitudes toward foreign companies. Now, let's go to legal systems and government policies. Both pairs of countries, the US and China, follow civil law-based legal systems. But in China, in China, they face more difficulties with intellectual property and the protection of intellectual property, while in the U.S., intellectual property protection is a lot more stronger. Mexico and the US have policies that support the electric vehicle industry. The thing is, Mexico is moving at a slower pace, considering the incentives that they give to the EV industry, because the US is giving like aggressive promotions to this industry, whether as tax breaks so that people use EV and subsidiaries so that companies can work and create these parts. Now, let's talk about the geographic distance. First, let's talk about physical distance and time. Mexico and China separate by more than 11,000 kilometers, which definitely impacts transportation times and cost in electric vehicles part industry. In the contrast, the proximity between Mexico and the United States allowed for a lot more faster deliveries time and lower logistic cost. They can take advantage of land and rail routes as well as their shared border that will facilitate trade. Now, for the economics and labor differences, it's a big thing. China economic size is significantly larger than Mexico. Its GDP is 18 trillion, whereas Mexico's GDP is only 1.5 trillion. This disparity just even grows bigger when talking about the US, that is the country that has the biggest GDP in the world, that it's over $25 trillion. Now for labor costs are lower in Mexico than in the US, which will attract investment, although they are still affecting the gap of technology and international capabilities between Mexico and the US. They remain considerable, so they need an investment in infrastructure and education. So, in summary, the US-Mexico relationship is more advantageous to the industry, and for Mexico, it's more advantageous than the one for Mexico-China, due to its geographic proximity, faster turnaround times, and greater legal protection offered by the US. Also, consider everything else. Both pairs of countries have unique challenges that companies must consider before doing before considering an internalization process.
I am Dana Rodriguez, and in this section, I will present an analysis of the expansion of the Mexican electric vehicle parts industry using the Pestel-Wicon analysis to determine the optimal market between the USA and China. So, through this analysis, we will closely examine the factors influencing the competitiveness of these markets and how trade agreements between Mexico and these countries impact to the expansion. So, for this analysis, we use the matrix to evaluate key factors in the markets of the USA and China. And among the most relevant indicators are the GDP growth, days of doing business, the research and development R&D levels, the high-tech exports, and vulnerability to climate change. For example, here in the case of China, the country excels in many of these indicators with a strong GDP growth, scoring 4 points compared to the USA, which showed a score of only 1.33 points. On the other hand, the USA showed higher levels of investment in R&D with a score of 4 compared to China's 3.28, positioning the United States like as a technological powerhouse. Additionally, the USA better levels in terms of ease of starting a new business, with a score of minus 0.80, that is basically the highest score between Mexico and China. China demonstrates clear advantages in GDP growth with a score of 4 and technological exports with a notable score of 3, but faces challenges, for example, related to its vulnerability index, with a score of 2.38 and a relatively higher corruption perception index than the United States. Mexico, as we know, has significant agreements with the USA, such as the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, which facilitates the trade of goods and services, including the export of auto parts. However, Mexico does not have like a direct free trade agreement with China, which may represent an initial barrier. But despite this, trade relations between the two countries have grown significantly in the recent years, with an increase in exports of intermediate goods and also raw materials. So this represents a growth opportunity as China's demand for technological and electrical products continues to rise. Therefore, although there is no formal agreement, the bilateral agreements and the development of new negotiations could facilitate the entry of the Mexican auto parts industry in the Chinese market. In the Wiklund analysis, the results show that China excels with the highest score in economic growth and significant investment in research and development, which is like really, really important for the technological innovation required in the electric vehicle sector. So China offers a rapidly growing market with a high demand for electric vehicles. Also, without a formal trade agreement, the absence of a free trade agreement may initially complicate Mexican exports, but diplomatic relationships and mutual interest in technological goods provide a viable path to overcome these barriers. So we consider China to be the optimal market for the expansion of the Mexican electric vehicle parts industry because its strong economic growth, investment in R&D, and the position as a leader in technological exports make China as a unique opportunity for the Mexican industry. Although there are commercial challenges such as the lack of a direct free trade agreement, trade relations between Mexico and China have grown, and the Chinese market offers much greater expansion potential than the United States. Therefore, with the implementation of an appropriate strategy, China represents the future for the Mexican auto parts industry.
So, in light of our analysis, the Mexican electric vehicle, auto parts, and component industry should focus on the United States as a primary overseas market. This region offers strategic advantages due to their proximity, established trade agreements under the USA, Mexican, and Canada trade agreement, and the growing demand of EVs in the region. Additionally, exploring opportunities in Europe and China could provide valuable growth potential despite some logistical and regulatory challenges. Well, this is for the future. First, our internationalization process should begin in the US. Mexican companies should prioritize the international strategic components, first batteries, then energy storage systems, and high-tech electronics. And not leaving the structural components like lightweight chassis and aluminum parts that are also critical to Mexico's strong manufacturing capabilities. These areas what Mexico is the expert in. So, to effectively internationalize, the Mexican EV auto parts companies should adopt the following strategies. First, they should form alliances, like strategic alliances. They should partner with EV manufacturers in key markets, like in the US, that it's the one that's going to be internationalizing, and later in Europe, this to secure long-term contracts and access the advanced technology that's going to be created. The second thing is optimize their logistics. They should take advantage of Mexico's proximity to the US, their geographic leverage. This to minimize transportation and cost and delivery times. Last but not least, they should invest in technology. They should enhance production capabilities to stay competitive in the global EV parts industry that it's growing year by year. So the best thing they can do is to invest in technology. So by implementing these strategies, Mexican companies can leverage their geographical and cost advantages, positioning themselves effectively in the competitive global EV auto parts market.